Mkhulu Nsingiza is the founder of the Great Empire of Kemet. Great Empire of Kemet is a movement that seeks to bring Africans back to their original beliefs. And one of those beliefs is Kemeticism. It is a word that we use to describe the ancient beliefs of Egypt. And so the word used is Kemet. And Kemet is how the Egyptians used to describe themselves, as opposed to the word Egypt, which is a Greek word. And so Mkhulu Nsingiza is also somebody who advocates for Africa to have their own calendar. And he has been pushing this for quite some time now. And I'm also one of the people that do agree with him when it comes to at least the principle that we should have our own calendar, because the calendar we use today is the Gregorian calendar, which has been adapted from the Julian calendar as well. So these are calendars that might be foreign to the African, and maybe they might have been created without taking into consideration what Africa is like. And so I do agree in principle, but however, how we implement an African calendar, that's a separate debate for another day. He's also the CEO of the Zinzi Mandela Foundation. And we're going to watch a video now where he shares his views about the origins of Christianity. Now, the only reason why I respond to these videos is because Christianity has obviously been questioned. And so I think it's important that everybody, every African should take these discussions very seriously. Because if Christianity is false, if Christianity has been created in Rome, then it means Africans have been misled. It means the whole world has been misled. And so it's important that we engage in these discussions. But equally, if Christianity is true, then it means that this is not just a discussion or a debate that we just have, just because we don't have better things to discuss. But actually, if the claims of Christianity are true, then it's not just a matter of life and death, but it's also about heaven and hell. It's an important discussion to have. And I think every African needs to take these discussions very seriously. This is Bisrat for Africa, a channel dedicated to giving you Christian commentary on religious and spiritual matters. So let's watch the video, and then, as usual, I will give my commentary in the end.
We are more interested in the metaphysical, siyayibona le apple, but we are not interested because we can see it. We are interested in what created, what principles were involved in the creation of that, apple. So, abelungu ke misinterpreted yonke lento le, meaning ukuthi this, spiritual canon sethu, bona they twisted it for social control so that they are able ukuthi ba-control abantu and replace in nature with a physicality. Example, uJesu. You know the concept of Jesu never existed. He was created by Constantine, 352, AD, at the Council of Nicaea. It's a concept that was generated by him to say, I'm going to use this concept to socially control people.
So what do you mean? What do you mean? Break it down for us. What do you mean Jesus was made up?
No, it's a made up thing. It's not a real character. Umuntu that came up with the concept, Constantine. Constantine then commissioned Michelangelo to draw up a figure that will fit its description there. I show you funny figure so. So it is an artistic expression. It's not a physical.
Where did it come from?
From Rome. Constantine.
Where did the idea of creating a Jesus come from?
From Constantine.
Why did they need to make a Jesus?
So that they control abantu, social control. They were moving people from nature.
Yes.
So that abantu now, they must sithandaze physicality. Yes. Remember, because ever since we were colonized on the continent, we've been praying, to this Jesus. And this Jesus, portrayal yakhe mhlophe. It means ukuthi mawubona umlungu ubona uJesus. So that was the mess up ebayenza la emakhanda ethu. Yingakho obaba bethu even today are still scared of abelungu. Yeah. Because of this thing ukuthi mengivukela umlungu ngivukela uNkulunkulu.
Yeah.
Umlungu can never equate, they can never equate themselves nelanga. The only creator on earth is the sun. Let me tell you, Gonjan. I said to you, the sun burns, carbon
Yes.
to create hydrogen. When DNA yako is bonded by the same hydrogen. So as long as the sun is there, we are pila. Do you understand? So, and as long as the sun is there and the moon, there's life on earth.
So that's the section I will be dealing with. And if you want the full video, I have attached it in the description box for you to watch. It's over an hour. And so I'm just going to deal with this particular section because it's the one section where he actually talks about Christianity. And I'm not an expert in African spirituality. He probably knows better about it than I do. But I am a student of comparative religion. And so my job is to look at the claims of African spirituality and see where they are different with Christianity and where there's also similarities as well. Now, it's very important as I progress in the video to also first highlight the parts that I agree with, because I'm a firm believer that somebody can be wrong about one thing, but it doesn't mean they're wrong about everything. In the same way that somebody can be right about one thing, but be wrong about something else. I think it's important these days as we engage with one another that we learn to criticize people without demonizing them, but also to praise somebody without deifying them or saying everything they say or do is perfect. And so we need to get into that habit of being able to acknowledge when people are right and also to critique when the things are wrong. This is the best way that we can learn from each other. And may the best ideas and may truth prevail in the end. And so the first thing I want to say is that when Mkhulu Nsingiza talks about the image of Jesus being used as a tool of oppression, I think he's dead right on that one. I think that if you go to Ethiopia today, you will find the image of Jesus being the image of a black person. If you go to Japan, the image of Jesus looks like a Japanese person. If you go to Europe, image of Jesus looks like a white person. But why is it that the image of Jesus also in Africa looks like a white person when we know that this is not a historical representation of who Jesus was? Like, Jesus was not a white person from Europe. He was a Middle Eastern brown-skinned person from Israel. And so how did he become white? Now, it's important that you understand, if Europeans made Jesus white to make him relevant to Europe, I would have no problem with that. But the problem is when you move white Jesus from Europe and then you represent him to Africans, and mind you, you're preaching the gospel to Africans, but also you're telling them that Jesus looks like me. And so that can be used as a tool of oppression, as Mkhulu Nsingiza is saying, and it's something that the church needs to take seriously. If the church is serious about preaching the gospel to this generation that is informed, it is not going to happen if we do not acknowledge the faults and the shortcomings of the church. And so I think we'll begin to change these things if we also remove the images of Jesus, that portray this Jesus as a European white person. But we need to make Jesus more relevant to Africans. And I think the best way we can do that is to remove the misrepresentation of Jesus as a white person. And so it's something that we as a church need to correct. It's something that we need to lament, because the one thing that is supposed to liberate people is now being used to also oppress people. And so it's something that is sad. It's something that the church needs to look back at and go on their knees and ask God for forgiveness. But it's also important that you understand that just because Christianity was used or white Jesus was used as a tool of oppression, that doesn't actually falsify Christianity. Anything can be used actually as a tool of oppression. Anything that is good can be used for evil. I mean, if you look at the Bible, the story of Judas shows us that something as simple as a kiss can be used for evil. It can be used to betray somebody. And so does this tell us now that kissing is wrong? Should we all stop kissing just because it was used for deceiving, or was it used, to betray somebody? Absolutely not. And I think that when something good is used for evil, it doesn't tell you about the actual thing. It actually tells you about the people who did it. And so when the image of Jesus is used as a tool of oppression, it doesn't actually tell you anything about Christianity, but tells you about the people who did it. Because if you go back to the Bible, you'll see that there's no description of Jesus as a white person. And in fact, the Bible, like I've said before, actually condemns one race oppressing the other race, and also racial superiority. Today, there are over 2 billion people who identify themselves as Christians. Are these people misled? Have they been deceived by this person called Constantine, who invented Christianity at 352 and then commissioned Michelangelo to draw up an image that these people can worship? Have we been tricked into believing in this made up image called Jesus? Now, it's very important that when somebody makes claims about Christianity or about spirituality or about history, that we examine the claims, and we examine the claims in relation to the evidence. Does the claim match up the evidence that we already have? Because if you look at the evidence, you can actually see, according to what he's saying, if Constantine invented Jesus 352 and then commissioned Michelangelo, who lived in the 1400s, 14 to 1500s, that's over 1,000 years between these two people. How can it be possible for somebody to commission somebody who is going to live 1,000 years ahead of you and tell that person, unless he's some kind of a prophet, it's virtually impossible. And so you can see that this is not something that is based on evidence. And it's not something that I would say that he genuinely actually went and studied, but it's almost as if, because people are so ready to hear something negative about Christianity, they'll take anything. It's almost like when somebody wants to break into your house, right? They have to feed a bone to your dog, and the dog is after the bone, and so you use the bone to pull the dog out. And so I think a lot of people these days use the bone of saying, this is African spirituality. It's who we were before colonization. And people obviously want that bone and they come running, but they also forget that they leave the door open for people to say whatever. And so it's important that we examine the facts and, in fact, examine the claims in relation to the facts. What about the claim that Constantine created Christianity? How does that hold up against the facts? Now, this is the second important thing that you need to do when somebody makes claims about religion or Christianity or spirituality. You've got to ask yourself, what is the earliest writing about this person? What is the earliest evidence of Christianity? Now, Constantine was born 272 AD. 272 AD. Is there any evidence of Christianity prior to 272 AD? Absolutely, there's a lot of evidence that disproves this claim. First of all, the earliest writing or the earliest writing about Jesus would be the New Testament. But even if you put the New Testament aside, you can know who Jesus was. You can know that he had 12 disciples. You can know that he was born of a virgin. You can know that he worked miracles. You can know that he died and rose again, just from the quotations of the early church fathers who actually quoted the Bible or quoted the Gospels. The earliest writings would be the Didache, which comes in the 1st century. What about Clement of Rome? He also wrote in the 1st century. This is over 180 years before Constantine was even born. There's actually evidence of early church fathers in Africa who wrote about Jesus, like Clement of Alexandria. What about Tertullian? All these church fathers wrote centuries before the Council of Nicaea and before Constantine was even born. And so if you take these claims and you match them up with the evidence, you see that the claim does not hold up. Now, this is not even a video that is designed to make a claim about the historicity of Jesus. But actually, if there's a claim that says Jesus did not exist, that claim needs to be supported by facts. And it's not on me to support that claim, it's the person who's made it. It's the people that believe in this theory that need to bring evidence that supports that claim, and then we can examine the evidence. We as Christians have often been accused of believing without evidence. We're accused of being people who just follow blindly, without any reasoning, without any logic, without any looking at the facts. But here we see a simple example of people who are not Christians who are actually celebrating misinformation. If you look in the comment section, not even one person even picked that up. Not even one person is even interested to say, let me check this up. But everybody is taking it as fact and truth, as gospel truth. And so this is the problem that we have when people don't want to go to the sources for themselves, when people don't want to go and examine the evidence for themselves. and they leave it to memes or to videos or to social media or to even to people like Mkhulu Nsingiza, you know, it's something that is important for all of us, that our faith must be something that we own. We got to own our faith. And faith simply just means trust. And without evidence, actually, there is no trust. Because if you think about it, if you want to send your kids to school, you got to first trust that that school is a good school. If you want to borrow money from the bank will first check if there's evidence that you will pay the money back. So life is always lived based on evidence. And when you trust somebody, you trust them based on evidence that they can be trustworthy. And so we need to move away from just investing our trust in information, in things and belief systems without actually first examining the evidence. Because I'm convinced that when we examine the facts, when we look at the facts the way that they are, without trying to impose colonialism or slavery or certain narratives, but if we go plainly to history, we will see that the evidence will always point us in the direction of Jesus Christ.